my name is Lonsdale and today we are talking about trail running shoes. In this video we'll talk about two shoes, one of which is my favourite trail running shoe of all time. It's a bold statement, you'll need to stay tuned to find out why. I'm going to start at the base of the shoe. On that sole, I'm going to talk about Mission Grip rubber. It's a proprietary rubber compound developed by On in conjunction with their athletes and their testing team, and it's as sticky as any rubber that I've ever run in. I've run in Vibram, I've run in Continental, list rubbers here. This Mission Grip sticks to rock, wet or dry, does an amazing job in wet grass, and it just gives you real good confidence when moving fast in the trails. The actual sole pattern itself has a pretty uniform tread, and each lug has its own secondary lug that gives some directional grip, if you like. So the forefoot and the midfoot, the tread is pointing backwards to give you that backwards push, and on the heel of the shoe, on the back of the shoe, the directional grip is pointing forwards to give you some braking when that heel strikes on those downhills. Speaking of downhills, On says that this shoe is very fast downhill, and I agree with them. Anyone that's run with me, or anyone that knows my style of running, hard and fast, aggressive on the downhill is how I like to go. And truly, this is the most comfortable downhill shoe I've ever put to the test. So let's speak about why this is so good on the downhills, and also why it performs incredibly well throughout. It's mainly owing to these clouds in the heel. Each of these clouds compresses in a slightly different way. And what it does is it gives you amazing shock absorption, but also spring back so that you can hit hard, strike hard in the forefoot, take that shock in the heel, and then explode out of it. And you can just take such terrain in your stride at full pelt. Definitely strong legs helps as well, but these shoes make up for all of your weaknesses that you might have. They are flipping incredible. Those clouds carry all the way through to the midfoot and forefoot, and when you're going uphill and on those flats as well, this takes that shock, gives energy back to the foot, and it just keeps you feeling fresher for longer. Sounds like a marketing slogan. Honestly, it really, truly does. Those clouds also come through to the central part of the foot, and yeah, it just works. On top of that, you also have the speed board, and if you listen, it's a solid piece of material that runs pretty much throughout the entire shoe. The speed board gives you that spring, but it also gives a rock plate. And for me, a rock plate is something that's really important when you're moving through the trails. You don't want to be feeling every bump, every pebble, every sharp root or whatever under the foot. It hurts, it slows you down, and over time, it's just going to give you more fatigue. The rock plate and speed board in this is exceptional. I don't think I've ever felt a sharp rock through this shoe. Certainly not that I can remember anyway. So yeah, that sole unit, running on clouds is what On say, and honestly, it's flipping decent. Decent in English for all you Americans means really good. It's a northern thing. They're really bloody good. Okay, let's keep going upwards. The upper on this shoe is made from a perforated mesh. Kind of feels soft and light. When I first put them on, I definitely was skeptical as to how durable it was. Same with the Peaks, I'll tell you about that later. But they are so good at taking a beating, and that mesh does another thing really well. It breathes and it dries. I have very hot feet. Extra breathability is always appreciated, and the mesh up here works exceptionally well in that regard. The lacing system. So it looks like a fairly simple lacing system, but actually the whole kind of midsole and lacing system pulls itself in, grips the upper part of the foot really nicely, gives you a very secure feeling. I also opt to do the looping in the laces, which really hugs the heel, has this handy elastic to keep the laces tucked in so you've not got loops flying around. I have tripped over in the past in shoes that don't have that when they've got caught on a tree root, so it can happen. The tongue on this shoe I'm really into. It's very thin. Often trail shoes for some reason have really thick padded tongues. For me, it's unnecessary weight, or it's hiding something. It's like poor construction around the laces or whatever. There's no pressure points here. Everything feels good. I really like that thin tongue, and it also, again, hot feet, it doesn't overheat. And then let's look at that heel. So you've got a really secure heel cup, pretty solid in that back there, gives great support over long distances. The longest that I've run in these shoes is 36 miles, I think, and honestly at the end of that run my feet were in incredible shape. On doesn't sell these as a racing shoe, that's what they say that these guys are for, but I have to say the speed that I can give on the downhills in this shoe, combined with that comfort over a long period of time, I would opt to wear these in a race scenario. Okay, let's talk about the Cloudventure Peak. Cloudventure Peak isn't my favourite. Cloudventure is definitely my favourite. However, I will choose this shoe over that one when the conditions are wetter. The aggressive tread on this one is definitely better on that super wet ground. But anything other than thick mud, these are great. As soon as the mud is like wet and thick, or if it's snowy, for example, the more aggressive tread on this, the tread pattern works better. When the ground is as soft and wet as mud or snow is, then of course the reduced number of clouds is less important. So yeah, like that, I guess, is a compromise that is okay. The speedboard in this, very, very good again, but is thinner and actually split up at the top, and means that the rock plate isn't quite as sturdy as this one. But it does work, I can't complain. But you can just tell that it's not as kind of protective. You feel things in this slightly stripped back sole through the foot that you just wouldn't in the Cloudventure. Very light fabric on the upper. It's this kind of stretchy fabric. It almost looks like a soft shell. Again, I was skeptical with this fabric the first time I saw it, but it's super durable. You can see from these, despite all of the terrain that they've been put through, bushy undergrowth, like gnarly ridges, the works, there is nowhere at all. All you have is some discoloration of that lovely white colour. A lot of people don't like the white. Personally, I think it's cool because your shoes end up the colour of the dirt that you run in. So it's almost like a badge of honour. The first time I ran in these was in the Lake District in England. The dirt there is very peaty, it's almost purple. So these shoes have kind of ended up being purple over time. I'm into that. Below that upper is this kind of meshy foam again. Different to this, I would say that it hugs the foot like a sock. In terms of, so here's the thing for your comparison, in terms of when you first put it on your foot, this thing feels incredible. 15 miles later, I think like foot fatigue, you're definitely going to feel it. So I think the longest I've run in these is 18 miles, and at the end of it, after running, you know, in the mountains and that, my feet felt tired. As I've already said, it's not the case with this. What else do I need to tell you? Very good downhill, very, very comfortable over long distances, slightly heavier than this, but for me, comfort is the key. Definitely much lighter, definitely more aggressive in that sole pattern for the wet and for the snow. It's really up to you as to which way you go. A quick word on fit, my foot is ever so slightly wider than average. It's basically the average width, and both of these feel good. You can see that the Peak is less wide, it's slightly narrower. You can also see if you look that way as well, but it doesn't affect me at all. You know, it feels good for me. I even have to, you know, really cinch it down over the middle of the foot, over the instep, to make sure that there's no movement. This, for me, perfectly wide, lots of space in the forefoot, lots of space for feet to swell, to get tired. I do know people with wide feet that say these are on the narrow side of wide, you know, if that makes sense. So the people with wider feet say that they want something wider for them, for long distances, to each their own. So that was the Cloudventure and the Cloudventure Peak from On Running. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I would be delighted to answer them. And if you want to reach out directly, it couldn't be easier. You can of course reach me on @LiamLonsdale on Instagram, or on my website liamlonsdale.com. There's going to be lots more reviews coming, so make sure you like and subscribe if you were into this video. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been an absolute pleasure, and whatever you're planning on doing, make sure you get out there, do it safely, stay psyched. See you next time.